That is super cool.
Yeah.
All right. Are you ready to get started?
Yeah, let's go. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, good afternoon to everyone. My name is Madeline, and I'm the founder of Passion Fruit, and we provide support for those with PCOS through shame-free support groups, educational social media, and PCOS-focused products. And today we are joined by the wonderful Dr. Galina. She is a naturopathic doctor, and you put a lot of focus on PCOS, not only in your social media, but your practice as well. Am I correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, nice to be here. I'm glad, to be part of this. I'm very excited whenever there's any kind of PCOS awareness support going on, especially when it's done from a different perspective, not just like your standard, right? Here's the solution for PCOS type of thing. Yeah. The reason I focus on it is because I myself have PCOS. It's been a long journey for me to actually get that diagnosis. I pushed for that diagnosis. It wasn't something that, I knew deep down that it was that. And eventually I got that official diagnosis, but I've been, healing myself with all this for a long time before I even had the diagnosis. But I saw the struggle and I saw what was happening in the conventional medical model. And being a naturopathic doctor, and I knew there was different, approach to all this. I just had to find that specific approach and how it works with PCOS, right? So over the years, I've kind of, through a lot of trial and error on myself as well, right, developed my holistic naturopathic approach to PCOS. And that's why I focus on it. I would say that's the majority of my practice.
Can I ask you, were you a naturopathic doctor before you got your diagnosis, or did that kind of push you into wanting to get into being a naturopathic doctor?
Yeah, no, what pushed me into being a naturopathic doctor is actually seeing my grandparents kind of suffer and get pill after pill after pill. They get a pill for blood pressure, high cholesterol, and then that would cause them to have new symptoms, and then they'd have to get a pill for that. So ultimately, and I saw like the lack of attention, right, where doctors were spending maybe 10 minutes with them and that's it, not really understanding what their health concerns were. So I saw my grandparents go through that, and I really didn't like it, but I always knew I wanted to be in medicine somehow. I just didn't like what I was seeing. And also I was born in Ukraine, actually. That's where my family's from. So we kind of grew up there with like home remedies. We always had home remedies. My mom never really took me to the doctor unless it was like a dire emergency. My grandma always like had some kind of a herb for this or that. So it's just kind of was part of me, but so when I went into, naturopathic school, it wasn't like, oh, I have these hormonal issues that I need to deal with, I just really liked what naturopathic medicine stood for, right? And then I have always had hormonal problems though. Like that was something that was quite obvious to me. I just never really, really paid much attention to it. Like my period started late. I was 17 when I got my period, which is, girls get at a way younger age, obviously, right? So that was already like something was going wrong there, right? And so I always knew I had hormonal issues. And then, when my doctor at that time, when I was still like a teenager, right, put me on birth control, and I did it willingly. And my mom, who really just didn't know any better, also said, yeah, it's fine. Like, are you sure you want to do it? But like, if you really want to, like, it's fine, So I was on birth control. And I think, I don't know if I've always had PCOS or if after being on birth control, right? Like, and then, when you come off the pill, a lot of times it's still PCOS. But it really kind of showed its head after I had my daughter. After I had my daughter, the PCOS was glaringly obvious. So that's when I pushed for the diagnosis.
Interesting. I really like that you brought up about naturopathic medicine and just being able to spend more time with people and getting to the root cause, because I think that is many women's biggest complaint about being diagnosed with PCOS, or even getting a diagnosis for PCOS, is that they have to push so hard to even get a doctor to really listen to them and spend any amount of time and effort trying to dig to the bottom of what is going on. Yeah,
exactly. And I was my own advocate, and I knew what I was talking about. A lot of women don't have that, right? So they just get brushed off by their doctors, right? They come in for their annual checkup, and that's it, right? As a naturopathic doctor, my first visit with any patient's an hour long. Okay, when's the last time you've seen a doctor spend an hour with a patient, right? But that's the difference. We want to get the root cause, right? The goal is
Mhm.
to understand what's underneath the symptoms, right? Because PCOS, right? I mean, it is a diagnosis, but at the end of the day, it's just really a collection of symptoms, right? But why are they happening? There's many reasons why women get PCOS, more than even just like the standard 4 defined types of PCOS, right? There's other things that factor into why a woman may develop PCOS. So yeah, we definitely get to know our patients and try to understand root cause. It's also called functional medicine, like understanding root cause through specialty testing and then addressing that, through, so it is evidence-based, right? We do all this testing to understand what's going on, and then we treat it naturally, holistically through diet, lifestyle, supplementation.
Mhm. That actually leads really well into a lot of your social media. You talk about taking a holistic approach to PCS, a whole body approach to PCS. And can you talk a little bit about what taking a holistic approach to treating a patient with PCOS looks like for you?
Yeah. Sure. So first and foremost, we have to check hormones, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we need to know what's going on. I mean, usually it's a high testosterone or DHEA situation, and usually low progesterone, right? And then sometimes you have estrogen being high or low, actually, in women PCOS. So those are like the standard things. But then when we talk about taking a holistic head to toe inside out approach, we also look at your adrenals, which is huge when it comes to PCOS. We look at your thyroid, which is huge when it comes to PCOS. We look at any nutrient deficiencies, toxicity, a million other things, but those are kind of the things we start with, right?
Mhm.
To really understand what's happening. Oh, we check for autoimmunity as well, right? So just to make sure we understand why your PCOS is happening, and not just give you something to address your high testosterone, because that's going to solve the problem partially, but not, it's not really going to resolve it on a deeper
Mhm.
level, right? So
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, I love that. I love looking at PCOS through the lens of not just trying to cure a symptom, but
Yeah.
trying to look at what's causing these symptoms. Because I feel like so
Yeah.
often, women are told like, oh, the way to fix PCOS is to lose weight or stop eating carbs
Oh, yeah.
or get on this birth
Yeah.
control or start
Yeah.
taking these hormones. And so often that is just like a band-aid on the actual
Exactly.
problem.
The weight thing, it's a symptom of a deeper issue ultimately, right?
Mhm.
Like whether it's insulin resistance, or something else that's going on, right? Because not every PCOS has insulin resistance, although that's one of the standard things, right? But
Mhm.
there's so many reasons why weight is an issue with PCOS, right? So just losing the weight is just like, okay, you can push yourself to lose weight, you can exercise harder, you can go crazy with your diet, like be super strict. But again, you're just putting a band-aid on it. Ultimately, it's good to lose weight. It will improve hormone balance and all that stuff. But what is the reason why the weight even became an issue in the first place, right? And that's
Mhm.
a hormonal imbalance, not the other way around. The weight doesn't usually cause a hormonal imbalance. Sometimes. And when the weight is really an issue of a person just like not living a healthy lifestyle, we can't exclude that ever, because I can't say like your hormones are only at fault. Like if I see a person's eating junk food all day, every day, that's a conversation we're going to have regarding,
Mhm.
diet
Mhm.
and weight. But usually the weight is not the cause of, the hormone imbalance. Usually the hormone imbalance is the cause of the weight gain ultimately. So
100%. I completely agree with you. I think that is just like one of the go-to, oh, just lose weight. That'll fix it. Oh, just your problem is you need to lose weight. It's a go-to answer.
exactly. And that's kind of like also my platform with PCOS, right? I said, let's redefine PCOS, right? And,
Mm-hmm.
so if you take the acronym PCOS and I changed it to positive change over suffering, right? Because we want to make the positive changes, the impactful, meaningful, practical, and effective changes, not just like again, throwing a band-aid at it, but we want to do what's gonna, especially first of all, work for you because you're unique, right? Although there are certain tools that, can be used for most women with PCOS. Ultimately, every woman is unique, right? So
Mm-hmm.
but really redefining PCOS, the way it's looked at, the way it's, number one, the way it's diagnosed, or it's oftentimes underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed, right? Number two, the way it's addressed, which is just symptomatically, you either get put on birth control, metformin, spironolactone, that's like the trifecta usually.
Mm-hmm.
And then also kind of redefining in the sense of like knowing that it's not a life, like it's not like a life sentence. You might actually have to deal with your PCOS for the rest of your life, but if you make those right positive changes, you might not even know that it's like, you have to do things throughout your life to maintain your health, regardless of any diagnosis. And that applies to PCOS as well. But when you make those positive changes, the ones that look at, the ones that address you holistically, you're gonna, the suffering is gonna decrease, and you're gonna be able to live a meaningful, life without thinking that, oh, I have PCOS at every step of the way, right? So that's where positive change over suffering.
I love that it's multi-leveled. It's positive change over suffering for the PCOS sufferer, but it's also positive change. You're talking about it in terms of like the medical field. Like it's not just, there's multiple levels to it of that positive change over suffering. And I love that. I love that that's a really big part of your platform and that you talk about that a lot. Did you come up with that positive change over suffering? Was that you?
Yeah, it just kind of came to me. My best ideas come to me when I'm laying in bed, random like thoughts come into my head. That's one of my most creative. I was trying to, I like the idea of redefining PCOS. That came to me a while ago, but like, I really wanted to make that acronym meaningful, right? So that's just literally one day kind of came to me.
Oh, I really love that. I was like, oh, is she part of like a specific movement, or did she come up with that herself? I love that you came up with that by yourself.
My own thing. It's when I can't fall asleep at night and my brain is, running. My mind is running.
You're like all the different things that PCOS could mean, acronyms.
Exactly.
So I guess the last thing I want to talk about is, what is the most important thing for you, a naturopathic doctor who takes a holistic approach to PCOS? What is your message that you want to inform people the most about PCOS?
Number one, I want people to understand that, PCOS, again, and I said this just a minute ago, the PCOS is not a life sentence. It's not. You can live a happy, positive life, have kids if that's what you want. Obviously fertility is a big, oftentimes
a big one.
Issue for PCOS. So I have women with PCOS that have thankfully gotten pregnant, and have had healthy pregnancies and healthy babies, so there's life after the diagnosis. That's, I think, the biggest takeaway that I want women to understand. And it's also, I don't know if I want to use the word like reversible. I don't love to use that because, it's hard to say PCOS is fully reversible, but it can be almost to a point where you're just like not dealing with it on a daily basis, where it's so well managed that you forget that you have PCOS. And again, life with PCOS, life after PCOS, that can be, you can still be fulfilled as a woman, whether, you have PCOS or not. So
I love that. And I love that you actually are reluctant to say the word reversible, because it's manageable. It's the positive changes that you can do to get over the suffering. The positive changes. Right there, I'm just throwing it back to your acronym. Positive changes over suffering.
And some women, I'm in various forums and groups on Facebook, and some women kind of just become resigned to their PCOS and accept it. And that's not what I mean by like living with PCOS. Like you don't, they're just like over it, and they just like, I'm done, nothing's helping, so I'm just gonna, I don't care, I'm gonna, let's say, let all my facial hair grow out, or I don't care about fertility anymore, but deep down they really want kids, that's, they've given up a lot of times, and by the way, I know the hirsutism, the facial hair and the acne, those are obviously really problematic big things for women, because at the end of the day, a lot of women really do care about how they look on the outside, right? And it's silly to say that women don't, right? There's some of the most obvious symptoms of PCOS are the visible ones, and for women, I don't know. I mean, obviously every woman is different, but most women have some kind of self-image of themselves and some self-esteem tied to their appearance, right? Not that should really matter. Like at the end of the day, it matters like how happy you are with yourself. But for most women, it's undeniable that it's tied, right? So I don't want women to like, I don't want women to be like, oh, well, she said that like, just because I'm letting my facial hair grow out, like that I've given up, and then like I'm not making the right kind of choices for myself. I don't want women to think that. There's nothing wrong if they've decided that that's what they're comfortable with, but you don't have to be comfortable with that if you don't want to, is what I'm saying, basically. You know what I mean?
It's about letting that happen because you think that there's no hope. There's nothing that you can do to change it. There is something that you can do to make it better for yourself.
Yeah.
I love it. That's
So
a
there's
great
the difference
message.
between becoming resigned to it and just whatever, or like you're actually truly comfortable with it and you don't care. That's fine too, you know,
Mhm.
but there are lots of there's help there, you know, if you want it.
Yeah.
So
It's about knowing that we can make positive changes for ourselves, but also about what level of, self-acceptance and comfortability are we at within ourselves.
exactly. Yeah. And obviously there's other things that go beyond our physical appearance that, you know, PCOS impacts, right? Our
100%. Like
cycle,
fertility is a big one.
fertility, yeah, cycles, fertility, obviously those are huge, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Are you okay with me asking you a couple questions that our
Yeah, go
group
for
members
it.
have submitted for you? Okay, so
Absolutely.
I ask these questions so that group members can remain anonymous. They submit questions to me and then I'll ask them because I got no shame about asking any questions. It's totally okay.
Perfect.
So the first question is, I suffer with PCOS and I've been trying to conceive for over a year. Do you have any recommendations for me?
Yeah, so I kind of hit on that a little bit already. Number one, you know, it's harder to conceive with PCOS, but it's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely not impossible, right? So yeah, I have some great recommendations. Number one, they need to just reassess their diet and lifestyle. That's always step one. Like take a look. I'm big on being like clean and green kind of thing. I think that's
Mm,
actually a huge part of any hormonal imbalance, but especially with PCOS and fertility outside of the PCOS diagnosis as well. It's important that, you know, you're eating as cleanly as possible. You're using skincare products that are as clean as possible. I know they can get expensive, you know, but really eliminating, eliminating the toxins is step number one, in my opinion. Okay.
okay.
So that's one thing to do in preparation for, you know, when you're trying to conceive or, you know, in preparation if like a year down the line, right?
Mhm.
Number two, I'm obviously recommending getting all your hormones checked, but very thoroughly, not just like superficial, like progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, but going deeper into your sex hormones. There's a test I like to run called the Dutch test. And I'm not affiliated with it, but anyway, I just really love the test. I run it
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
almost all PCOS patients. And it just looks at a deeper level at your hormones, it looks at various pathways related to your hormones, how you're actually metabolizing the hormones, how they're connected to each other. Also looks at your adrenals. So just really comprehensive way to look at your hormones. So I recommend for those women that are having a hard time conceiving to really take a deeper look at the hormones. And then I like to say that all our hormones are like a big web. They're all connected, right? So we have your sex hormones, we have your adrenals, and then we have your thyroid. So that's like the trifecta of hormones that need to be looked at to start with, you know. And then I often find that women who have stalled in their fertility journey, like we've been trying, we're doing everything right, and nothing's happening. Like we're doing the temperature, the mucus, you know, cervical mucus, we're
Mhm.
timing, blah blah blah, and nothing's happening. Sometimes it's as simple as like literally nutrient deficiencies. I kid you not. Like, so
Really?
you know, yeah, taking a deeper look at your nutrients because all the various processes in our body, whether it's hormonal, hormone synthesis, or energy production, metabolism, all of that relies on our nutrients like B
Mhm.
vitamins, magnesium, just for some, you know, for an example. So that's something to look at. And also I encourage women to get checked for autoimmunity. I often find that that's one of the culprits and more prevalent nowadays, unfortunately.
Mhm. Would you mind expanding on that just a little bit?
Yeah. So autoimmunity, you know, there's people may have heard of like so like, you know, very specific autoimmune diseases like lupus, for example, that's
Mhm.
or like Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid autoimmune disease. Those are just some examples, you know. So those are specific diseases, and you don't have to have the specific diseases to have autoimmunity. Autoimmunity is basically when your body's kind of just attacking itself and causing all this inflammation. Okay, so you can
Mhm.
have kind of this general state of autoimmunity. There's a marker called ANA that I check with every woman who comes to me with PCOS or fertility stuff. We check their ANA to make sure to rule it in or rule it out. And oftentimes it's there. And it's shocking how often I see a positive ANA. You always have to retest the positive ANA, especially in the absence of symptoms of autoimmunity, because sometimes it comes back to false positives. And I think I've seen a
Mhm.
false positive maybe once or twice ever. Usually they're positive, you know, and
Mhm. Mhm.
um, and then the best way to address autoimmunity is bring down inflammation through, some lifestyle changes, and through some supplementation, but also there's something called the autoimmune protocol diet. I'm big on that. It's just basically avoiding triggers for autoimmunity and including foods that are supportive for you, that bring down inflammation and then, fight back against the autoimmunity. So women that have autoimmunity, it's been shown, there's been like actual studies, do have a harder time conceiving. And not only that, oftentimes they'll have pregnancy loss more often than not, miscarriage if with autoimmunity. And for some women, pregnancy makes their autoimmunity worse. For someone, it makes it better. So that's kind of also, we don't really, know what's going to happen, but that's why it's so important. I had a patient actually, she, for some reason, we didn't check her ANA to start with. I don't know why. Something got lost in translation. I don't know. We didn't check her ANA. She got pregnant. She had a miscarriage. Then we did check her ANA afterwards. Kind of dawned on me, hey, we missed your ANA for some reason, and we checked her ANA and it was positive, and has been shown a positive ANA does play a role in like recurrent miscarriage, but also plays a role in fertility itself, because there's just a lot of inflammation and your body's literally basically fighting against itself, right? So it definitely makes everything harder, including the fertility process.
That's so interesting. I love that you gave that recommendation, because I personally have never had my ANA checked, and I'm sure many women out there dealing with PCOS, especially through traditional medical routes, have not had that checked. So especially someone struggling with fertility, to get that checked, I think is a great recommendation.
Yeah. And one of the types of PCOS we have is like inflammation-based PCOS, right? And that ties into the autoimmunity, and also the Hashimoto's, which is a autoimmune hypothyroidism, actually oftentimes mimics PCOS. They kind of, if you do like, the diagram with the two circles, and then you put the symptoms, I would say 9 out of the 10 symptoms of each one overlap. Maybe there's like one defining symptom that's not the same, but a majority of the symptoms overlap between Hashimoto's and PCOS. So autoimmunity always has to be looked at.
Oh, super interesting. Great recommendations. I really appreciate that. Okay, next question is, I have such a hard time with my blood sugar. Sometimes it drops and I feel so shaky. I know this is related to my PCOS and insulin resistance, but what can I do to make it better?
Yeah. So first of all, again, I'm going to say diet, right? It's huge when it comes, especially when it comes to insulin resistance, right? Especially there's a few things that are super important when it comes to regulating, proper insulin, making sure you're producing insulin properly in the right amounts, right? Number one, you have to make sure you're eating protein, okay? Protein is huge when it comes to regulating your insulin and the way it responds to the blood sugar, the sugar that's coming in, right? The spike in blood sugar causes a spike in insulin, right? So what actually happens is when you, especially when you raise your blood sugar, like right away, you start your morning off with a high blood sugar, right? Like if you're eating lots of, carbs in the morning, I say tend to be lower carb in general, right? So if you're eating lots of carbs in the morning, you're eating the carbs, it causes a spike in your blood sugar. That in turn causes a spike in your insulin, right? To compensate for the blood sugar, because that's insulin's job, right? But what happens is when you have a spike in your insulin, it can't be spiked all the time. So then it goes into kind of these transient states. It goes up and down. So the insulin kind of, instead of being steady throughout the day, it kind of does this thing throughout the day. And that causes your blood sugar to go up and down, right? It causes states of like reactive hypoglycemia almost, right? So number one, that causes you to have cravings, which then is kind of this never ending cycle. You have cravings and then you want to eat more, and usually it's carbs, right? So number two, this kind of unstable insulin messes with your adrenals, with your cortisol specifically, which is your main stress hormone. Cortisol is the hormone that when you have too much of it, or sometimes even too little of it, causes weight gain, especially like the abdominal central kind of weight gain, causes energy issues, causes sleep issues, causes all your other hormones to suffer, right? So insulin, the way your body makes insulin, the way it insulin responds to what you're eating, causes a cascade of issues. Okay. So number one, so how can we help that? And especially in the mornings, higher protein, at least 20 to 25 grams of protein in the morning, and lower carb. I'm not saying you have to cut out carbs altogether. I know that's a fad as well, and keto is a fad. And I'm not necessarily against keto when you do it like in the short term, but it's not a sustainable thing. You know what I mean? It's not like something you're doing for life. But so I know lower carb is a fad, and I'm all for being lower carb. You don't have to cut out carbs altogether either. Just be smart about your carbs and be smart about when you're eating them. Definitely don't stuff them all in the morning. Focus on the protein in the morning. So that's one thing for, controlling your insulin. And obviously insulin resistance is tied to the PCOS, as we already talked about. But also there are supplements that really help without you having to go on metformin or anything else, more serious medications, right? There's some great herbs, a common one that's known as berberine. It's great at controlling, regulating your blood sugar. That's a good place to start. Let's see here. Inositol is amazing for regulating blood sugar. And obviously it's also really great for PCOS in general, right? The Mayo and the D-chiro-inositol, those are really popular among PCOS, women who have PCOS. So yeah, I would say those herbs. And then, your insulin is definitely tied to your testosterone. So that's huge, as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do to help you, regulate insulin normally.
That actually ties in perfectly because my last question for you is about what supplements you recommend for PCOS sufferers.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the myoinositol and the berberine. And do you have any other recommendations?
Yeah, so Mayo and D-chiro, both forms, Mayo being the main one, but D-chiro helps it along as well. It's like synergistic with it. Berberine, obviously, saw palmetto for those that have high testosterone or DHEA. That's a great herb for lowering testosterone. Usually most women who have PCOS do have high testosterone. There's some really great combo formulas actually for PCOS where it has all those ingredients. Also, you want to make sure you're getting like your zinc, your chromium, your vanadium, all these things that actually help you regulate blood sugar. There's a formula that I love. Can I speak about a specific formula or?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Again, I'm not tied to any lab company or any supplement. This is what I use in my practice. So I have like no financial incentive for any of this, but
totally.
I know you have to make it clear these days. But yeah, it's called PCOPX by Restorative Formulations. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's like just a great combo supplement of pretty much everything I just named. And Vitex in there. Vitex is a great balance, and hormone balancing, just general hormone balancing herb. So I love that format. I'm actually right now also working on my own proprietary PCOS supplement. So I'll keep you updated on as that develops.
Yes, please do.
Well. Yeah, it's gonna be like my own private label line, or basically or my own private label brand of supplements, and I'm gonna do a PCOS line. So I'm literally working on that as we speak.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah. Because I find I love this PCOPX formula. I find that it's missing certain things that I would want it all in one, So yeah. Let's see what else for supplements for your adrenals. If you have high cortisol, low cortisol, that's super important, So oftentimes I find women actually have high cortisol, more so than low cortisol. Low cortisol is like when you've been through adrenal fatigue for a while and like your adrenals are just not cortisol at all. That's not great either. But for high cortisol, there's something called phosphatidylserine. You have to be careful with that because it can sometimes cause a rise in your testosterone a little bit. So just depends if you have or don't have high testosterone, but it's a great cortisol lowering supplement. Also, there's something called L-theanine, which is a great calming herb. So I really like that as well when it comes to cortisol levels.
Great recommendations. I'm so excited for you starting on your own line. That's so exciting. I think I've seen you talk about PCOX on your social media.
Yeah.
Super good information and a ton of good information. I really appreciate it. Do you want to say what your social media handles are so that people can find you?
Yeah. So it's so should I do with the underscores and everything so it's exact? Or?
Yes, so they can search you.
So it's @DR_Galina _ND. So Galina, Galina. And then ND stands for naturopathic doctor. So that's my general naturopathic social media, Instagram, and it's tied to the Facebook as well. And then I have my specific PCOS social media handle. And that's just PCOS _DR doctor. So.
And I follow both of these. And specifically the PCOS doctor one, you post some really great and really informative stuff. You have some great recommendations. I love you talking about your own PCOS story. So I would definitely recommend people to follow you.
Oh, and I recently recorded a free webinar on women's health, hormones and stress. It's on my YouTube. I don't know if it's linked anywhere in my, I think I did post, like, I did make it a post actually that I have this webinar available, and then there's like a YouTube link. I'll double check because I made it a story. I want to make sure it's actual post as well that people can find, but it's a free webinar, and just it's about 35 minutes on women's health. It basically breaks down the approach to women's health through the lens of functional holistic medicine, and everything I just talked about with you, like hormones and testing and all that stuff. It gives it a lot more detail. So it's a really good webinar to look at.
Awesome. You'll have to email me the link for that so I can link it in the description for this video too.
Perfect. We'll make that easier. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming to talk with us and answering all these questions. You gave so much good information and I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. I'm always happy to be part of, well, obviously your own personal journey, but the more we get the word out about this, better
exactly
for everyone.
I want everyone in the world to have heard about PCOS.
It's the statistic is 1 in 10 women in America have it. So
I know it's so
right?
high, and especially for the amount of people who don't even know what it is, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I definitely will get in contact. Maybe we could do this again sometime. It was great.